Welcome to Janome Live. I'm Susan Enderson, and today I'm presenting the buttonhole foot, how to adjust the foot, the stabilizer plate, and creating standard and corded buttonholes.
To start off with, you're going to want your buttonhole foot with a button in it. Your fabric is going to want to be backed with, I use iron-on interfacing. This is standard for anything. So we have our buttonhole foot with a stabilizer plate underneath. Now I've already dropped in my button in the back and adjusted it. Attach the buttonhole foot to your machine and slide the fabric between the stabilizer plate and the foot itself. This allows the machine to feed the fabric through using the stabilizer plate. I'm going to remove the stabilizer plate and show you how to do a buttonhole using just stabilizer. This is just a tearaway. I'm still using the fusible interfacing to the inside of my fabric. This tearaway goes underneath the fabric and both pieces go underneath the presser foot. At my machine, I'm going to choose the second page, or the buttonhole page, for my utility screen. I'm going to start with just a standard number 1 buttonhole. Remember to bring down your buttonhole lever. This lever ensures that the right size buttonhole is created for the button you've placed into the presser foot. Janome machines make buttonholes by processing a straight stitch back for the length of the buttonhole, a satin stitch over that straight stitch, a straight stitch across to the other side, a straight stitch back again, and a bar tack at the very back, a satin stitch forward, and your second bar tack at the end. When the buttonhole is complete, simply remove it from the machine and you're ready to cut open the buttonhole. When using your stabilizer plate, you will still need to use the buttonhole lever, but you will not have to use the stabilizer tearaway underneath the fabric. I do use a embroidery thread when stitching a buttonhole, as well as a washout stabilizer on top of my fabric. I find I get my best results with this setup. Now, to open your buttonhole, Janome includes a buttonhole opener. Place the point in at the very end of the buttonhole, fold the fabric in half, and bring the point out just before the end of the other side of the buttonhole. Fold the fabric in half and rip through the fold. Once your buttonholes are done and you're ready to attach your buttons, take your button foot and attach it. It slides over the back of the presser foot first and then pushes up into the clip. At your machine, choose the button stitch number 14. Check the width or distance between the buttons. I usually find that 4.0 is for most standard buttons. So you do want to change that width before you actually start stitching on your button. Remove the button from your buttonhole foot and position it onto your garment, making sure that the button or the swing or the holes align to the same direction that the buttonhole goes. Drop your needle into the left side of the buttonhole foot. Here's a perfect chance to use that little thumb wheel that's just above the needle to check the width of your button holes, and just manually rotate that wheel and make sure that the hole or the needle will penetrate that second hole and you're not stitching through the button. Now you can go ahead and step on the foot control and stitch your button to your garment. So I have a beautiful buttonhole that fits my button. Remember to attach your button so the swing of the stitching on to attach the button is in the same direction as the buttonhole. Now, for all of those that thought you had a hump jumper in your Janome machine, it's not. It's for creating shank buttons. And here's how you do it. You simply slide the tool underneath the button, making sure that the opening goes horizontal against the bed so that you're not stitching into the tool at the same time you're attaching your button. Lower your presser foot, check the width again, making sure that the needle's going to go through both holes, and then run the machine and giving you that extra little space if you've got heavier fabric, or if you're working with like a corduroy or a pile, or for a robe or something that you've got a little bit of depth to it, even a coat. That's going to make that buttonhole lay just that much flatter because it's got extra room for the fabric to slide underneath the button. To make corded buttonholes, I've used pearl crown rayon or a heavy cord or a cord that you make yourself and slid it underneath the presser foot itself, hooking the loop over the very front and bringing the tails up through the back and clipping them under a metal clip at the back of the presser foot. This will hold them in place while I'm sewing. You still want to use interfacing to the back of your fabric whenever doing a buttonhole. Place it into or on top of the stabilizer plate. And again, I use a washout stabilizer on top. Don't forget to pull down your buttonhole lever. You still need that for this buttonhole as well. And just stitch your buttonhole as normal. When the buttonhole is completed, simply remove the buttonhole foot from the machine, dislodge or remove the little loop from the front of the presser foot and the strings from the back of the presser foot to remove the presser foot from the fabric. Now pull the strings so they slide up completely into the buttonhole itself. Since this is a sample, I'm just going to trim off the threads. Normally, if this were a project, I would go ahead and pull those threads or cords to the back of the buttonhole and tie them off. This buttonhole can be done as an accent or as a utility when you've got a buttonhole that tends to stretch out of shape, as on a knit or a heavy fabric. It gives you just a little bit more stability. Another way to cut open your buttonhole is using a button knife. This is just a pressure-sensitive blade or chisel. You don't place this on your machine. Use the wood that comes with it to place underneath the buttonhole as you use the little chisel to cut through all the fabric and stabilizer. If needed, you do have an adjustment on the side of the buttonhole foot. It's used by turning or adjusted by turning the screw at the very end to make it longer or shorter. This increases or decreases the amount of fabric that is being pulled through the machine when it's making a buttonhole. When would you use this? Well, if you've made a buttonhole, and you should always test your buttonholes first, make sure that the button is the right size. But if your fabric is not feeding for whatever purpose, maybe it's extra thick or something, and you need to have just that little bit of an extra length, you can still use the same size button, but just change where the position is of that screw or mark so that you get a longer or shorter buttonhole as needed. Don't forget to pull down that buttonhole lever. You still will need that to make the correct size buttonhole, even though you're elongating it or you're shortening the space. Now I've gone and stitched one standard button, one shortened buttonhole, and one elongated buttonhole, just so that you can see the difference. It's not great, but will account or allow for that little discrepancy in your fabric setup.
Thanks for joining me today. Remember to check with your dealer for any of the machines, items, or accessories shown in today's video. I'm Susan Enderson, and I'll look for you next time on Janome Live.